Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining me this Thursday morning. We are Thursday, November 9th, 2023. Today, I'll be talking a little bit about hiring seasonal workers for your Canadian business. So that is through the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. We'll give everybody a few minutes to join. My name is Jade Calver. I am a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, and I own and operate Calver Immigration Consulting Inc. We are located in beautiful Ontario, Canada, and we help workers come to Canada from across the world. So whether you're joining as an employer today or maybe you're an immigration representative, I think you're going to find this seminar helpful. So we'll be talking about how to bring seasonal workers. And so by seasonal workers, I don't necessarily mean those under the there's already there are the seasonal agricultural workers, but I'll actually be talking about the other types of seasonal workers. So those who are working in the hospitality industry or construction industry, workers like that are very much seasonal. So by seasonal, I mean work that happens mostly in the summertime in Canada, so when it's warm, and lasts for 270 days or less, so 9 months or less. So we're just getting to 11 a.m. when I said I'd start, so let's hop right into it. So as I said earlier, my name is Jade Calver. I am a regulated Canadian immigration consultant, and I help people and businesses come to Canada. I have over a decade of experience now. It's been a while that I have been working in Canadian immigration. I also provide mentoring and co-counseling to immigration consultants and lawyers in Canada. So if you're an immigration representative and you are watching this, first of all, welcome. And also, please reach out to me if you have a file that you're thinking of taking on, or maybe you've already taken it on and you are looking for some help in strategy or actually putting the file together, I am happy to assist with that. So a bit of an overview of today's presentation. So I'll start out by talking briefly about the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, so what it is. I'll cover why LMIA-based work permits are important and how they can help you staff your business. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of things and talk about the factors to consider when hiring seasonal staff. I'll go over what the LMIA process looks like, and then I will conclude and we can do a live Q&A. So first of all, let's talk about what the Temporary Foreign Worker Program is. So the Temporary Foreign Worker Program is administered through Service Canada. You might hear the term ESDC. They're one and the same. So it's not actually Immigration Canada that administers this program. So to keep in mind that there are 2 steps to getting a work permit through the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. So the first step is to first get an LMIA from Service Canada. So that's what I'll be talking about this morning, and then your worker can get a work permit. The whole point of the Temporary Foreign Worker Program is to evaluate the effect of hiring the foreign worker on the labor market. So effectively, Service Canada's job is to make sure that you're not stealing positions from Canadians or permanent residents who are here. Because of our labor market, I would say that the LMIAs are quite easy to get at the moment. We very clearly, if you've been following the news at all, we don't have enough workers in Canada to meet the demand, especially in seasonal workers. So again, a lot of it is lower wage manual labor. So we just truly don't have a lot. We truly don't have enough people to fill those roles. And in particular, Canada is obviously a big place. And so if you're an employer, as you know, trying to staff a rural resort, or maybe you have a construction company that works rurally, it is quite hard to find staff who are going to show up to work every day. And then lastly, I have another presentation that I had a few weeks ago on the different streams. So you can go back and watch that for my more detailed overview of the streams. But effectively, we have a few different streams under the temporary foreign worker program. So one of those being the high wage stream. So that is for high wage workers. There's the low wage stream. We have seasonal and we have agricultural. So what I'll be talking about today are mostly the high wage and low wage streams, because that's what you'll be bringing these types of workers. That's what you'll be bringing these type of workers through for the temporary foreign worker program. So what are the benefits of this LMIA-based work permit? So again, the benefit to you as an employer is that you're guaranteed a worker who's going to come to Canada. The worker gets what's called a closed work permit when they come. So the idea is that they can only work for you when they're in Canada. So if you hire a foreign worker for your position, let's say you have a construction company, or maybe you have a hotel and you're hiring cleaners, the nice part about it is that the worker can only, they're closed to you because you've sponsored their work permit. So they can only work for you during the period that you say that your season lasts. And so, there's less turnover in your business. You also, a lot of the time, will get let's say you're a construction business, you often can hire someone who is maybe a little bit more skilled than the comparable Canadians who are going to be working in the position. So, keep that in mind too, because someone coming from Mexico, for example, often, if they're coming to Canada for the summertime and they're working in construction, they are going to be earning significantly more than what they would earn in a similar position in Mexico. So, and it also gives them the opportunity to maybe take the winter off in Mexico, or then go back and work the winter season in their home country. So what happens is that when you're hiring a seasonal worker, you have to first determine your LMIA stream. So you're going to go with either the high wage or the low wage stream for one of these applications. Whether you'll go with high wage or low wage is determined by the provincial wage. So we call this the prevailing median wage for the province. So right now, if you're in Ontario, it's anything that's paid 27 hourly or higher, that's considered high wage. Anything under that is considered low wage. The important thing to understand if you're bringing in seasonal workers here is that there are different requirements for both. High wage has less requirements. Low wage, you have to cover transportation to and from Canada, as well as show that there's accommodation for the workers or that you're providing it, which I'll go through a little bit more in a minute. So when you're hiring seasonal staff under the temporary foreign worker program, one of the requirements is that you have to show that you tried to find Canadians for the position. So again, an LMIA is very much, there's a labor shortage. It's not that you prefer to hire someone from abroad. It's you saying, I couldn't find anyone who was capable in Canada to do this work. So under the programs, we have to advertise the positions for 4 weeks. And then during that time, you have to review resumes and applications from Canadians or permanent residents, and you have to interview anyone who has the minimum qualifications. Assuming that you don't find anyone, then you move on to the next step in the LMIA process. There is a cap calculation for the low wage stream. So again, if you're in Ontario, anything under $27 an hour. So the cap calculation means that you have a 20% cap on your overall staff. So it means that the government has capped foreign workers at a work location. Certain industries like hospitality or construction have 30%. You also get a one-time cap exemption per work location for an occupation to this cap calculation. If you're doing a high wage application, then there's actually what's called a transition plan, where you have to show the types of activities that you're doing to try to find Canadians for the position. There is also that one-time exemption to the transition plan. If you're truly hiring for seasonal workers, then you don't have to do the transition plan. Next, the wages and working conditions are important. So when it comes to the wages, we have, so again, there's that high wage versus low wage difference, but then we also have the median wage for each occupation. So for example, if you're hiring a cook for the Ottawa region, so I know, for example, for sure, because I just looked at this the other day with a client of mine, the median wage is $16.55. So let's say you had a summer camp, because we're talking about seasonal workers, and you're bringing in a cook for the season, then that median wage is what you have to pay. So for the cook, it would be $16.55. That's the minimum that you have to pay. You also, if you have Canadians working in the position, so let's say your cooks at the location are making between $18 and $20 per hour, then you actually have to pay at least $18 an hour. Next, let's talk a little bit more about the housing and transportation requirement. So for your seasonal workers, this only applies to low-wage workers. So the temporary foreign worker program rules are that you have to pay transportation to and from the home country for the workers. You also have to show that either affordable accommodation is available or that you're providing it. So affordable accommodation under the program is defined as accommodation that is less than 30% of the gross take home for the month for the worker. So that includes utilities in that accommodation cost. So most of my employers, I would say right now, they're usually providing the accommodation and then charging back a lower rent to the seasonal worker, just because with how the labor market is at the moment, it's hard to show as an employer that there's affordable accommodation near the work location. So I would say most of my employers are providing that accommodation. And then this is new as well. So you have to, as an employer, you have to provide health coverage to your workers until they qualify for the provincial health coverage in your province. So the idea is that from the time that they come to Canada up until they qualify for provincial health coverage, you have to make sure that they're covered by some private health insurance, because again, the idea is that you have brought them here, and if they break a leg or something, they would have to pay out of pocket at a Canadian hospital. So you have to cover them with temporary private health insurance. Most foreign workers, though, as long as they're going to be working here for at least 6 months, they'll qualify for health insurance in the Canadian provinces that they're working in. So usually the private insurance, you just pay for a couple of months until they get their provincial healthcare card. So in the applications, you have to include a signed job offer and or contract for your seasonal workers. Again, it needs to be a detailed job offer letter, which includes duties and responsibilities. Most job offer letters that employers are using for their regular Canadian workers, they're not up to scruff for the temporary foreign worker program. So there are templates that the government has online that you can use. I find that those don't quite protect the employer that much. I think that, having an employment lawyer draft you a contract, we also have, we have stronger contracts as well that employers can use. Again, the contract duration for the seasonal workers is 270 days. So again, if you're trying to qualify for the exemptions to the CAP or the transition plan, it's 270 days or less. And then the job offer letter will also include the other terms of employment. So how much they're making, days they'll be working, hours per week, etc. Recruitment effort. So I touched on this earlier, but again, you have to make an effort to show that you tried to hire Canadian or permanent resident workers. The government is quite strict, as I've put here, about the advertising requirements. So if you look on the LMIA website, they require a lot of information to go into the job posting that you wouldn't normally put in a job posting if you're just hiring Canadians. So be mindful of that. You also have to post on the Canadian Job Bank and then on 2 other platforms. Low wage, you have to post on platforms that target underrepresented groups. High wage, it has to be on national job posting websites. So be mindful of that. When it comes to seasonal workers, I've put a few notes here about things we've learned sometimes the hard way when it comes to the LMIA process. So the minimum requirements. So for example, if you are posting to bring in a laborer, if you look at the occupation code, you let's say that you require, let's say you put on your job posting that you want the person to have high school. Well, the government may come back to you and say that's too skilled. So you have to be careful of that. And also think about your foreign workers. They may not have that. So it's something to keep in mind. I think that the biggest issue is often language requirements when it comes to bringing in foreign workers, especially if you're recruiting from, Latin America, for more trades and manual labor type positions. Often language is a problem here. So if you advertise that the person has to speak English and then they come and apply for a work permit, or we apply for it online and they can't speak English, then they're not going to get their work permit approved. So just little things you have to keep in mind that I think are really specific to hiring foreign workers for seasonal positions. As I said earlier, you have to pay the median wage associated with the occupation for the area in which they'll be working. So I have a client right now, I'm doing an LMIA for a landscape gardener for them. They're in the GTA and the median wage is $20 an hour. However, I asked how much their Canadians are making, and they said they start them at, I think it was $23 or $24 an hour. So we have to advertise again for that $23 per hour. You have to pay overtime and overtime pay. A lot of these seasonal positions are exempt from the regular provincial standards when it comes to overtime pay. So certain positions such as landscapers, it doesn't apply to them. And then lastly, just be mindful of workplace standards and employment standards. The workers who are coming to work for you will be governed under your Provincial Employment Standards Act. So they have the same rights as Canadians or permanent residents who are working for you. So again, up to date, I've always worked with employers who are really good and treat their temporary foreign workers really well, but just something just as a reminder, because if you get an inspection, you have to make sure that you're compliant with the Employment Standards Act or whichever act regulates your province. I wanted to touch a little bit more on that cap calculation. So remember, when it comes to the low wage stream, there is a 20 or 30% cap on low wage LMIA workers. So if you have a location, the idea is that for low wage LMIA workers, you can only have 20, or in some industries, 30% of your total workers be made up of low-wage LMIA work permit holders. There is that one exemption per year for seasonal workers. And then same thing when we go to the high-wage stream. So if you're paying in Ontario $27 or more per hour, then you have to show that you're trying to transition to hiring Canadians. And as I said earlier, there's also that once per year seasonal worker exemption that exists. Housing and transportation. This is a question that I get often from employers. So it's only under the low wage stream. So you have to provide adequate housing, which is mandatory under the low wage stream, or show that affordable accommodation is available. The transportation to from Canada is mandatory as well under the stream. However, transportation to the work site, it's not required, but I thought I would put it in here because it's important as an employer to understand when you're bringing in a seasonal worker, they may not they're very new to the country. They often have never been to Canada before. So things like, how to use public transportation, they likely will not have a car, maybe not a driver's license. So think about how they're actually going to get to the work site. Often, if an employer is hiring multiple foreign workers for their summertime work, often they will have them live in the same place altogether, and then the employer will provide that transportation to and from the accommodation to the work site, just because it is easier for everyone, both the employer and the employees. Health coverage and health safety training upon arrival. So as I said earlier, employers have to provide that private health insurance coverage up until they qualify for OHIP or whatever provincial coverage you have. As I said earlier, workplace safety standards apply. And then I've put here, I highly recommend that you, I'm sure most of you have some sort of training and orientation, but making sure, especially if this is the first time that you're hiring foreign workers, making an accommodation so that maybe you have someone who speaks their native language come in and explain the training, making sure maybe you can do that, some of the training before they even come to Canada. There is going to be a little bit of culture shock and therefore, some adjustment for when these workers are coming to work for you for the summer. So I always say to employers, these workers will be super loyal to you, but there is a little bit that you have to give to make sure that you're making some accommodations to make sure that everybody understands and is on the same page when it comes to, safety and health requirements, and then even just company culture, things like that. They're of course coming from a different country, so something to keep in mind. Let's talk about timing of the application. So right now, you have to advertise for 30 days. And then once you submit, the application is processed according to current processing times. So as of this month, the high wage stream takes 40 business days, and then the low wage is 45 business days. So this is this takes quite a long time. As you can see, it's going to be so in total, it's about 3 to 4 months. So I'm telling everyone who's hiring seasonally for 2024 to start advertising now, because you want to, starting the process now will make it so that if your season starts in March, you're going to actually have workers. Whereas if you don't start until January or February, it's just going to be too late. So remember, this is just the LMIA process, and then your workers have to do the work permit process. I tell all of my employers who are hiring seasonally to hire from non-TRV requiring countries if they can, or maybe hiring someone who's already here in Canada as a visitor. The reason for this is that they can get the work permit at the border. So if they're applying online, sometimes that can take an additional 3 to 4 months, whereas if they're applying at the border, then it's instant, and then they're issued that work permit on the spot. Once in a blue moon, the worker won't get the work permit. Maybe there's something that they didn't tell you about, such as a past criminality issue or something, or sometimes they just get a mean officer. So if they can't get a work permit, I always say have a few extra candidates on your roster just in case you need to switch out the name on the LMIA application that you have to then give the LMIA to a different worker for their work permit. So as I said, in conclusion, start early. We're starting now in November for our seasonal LMIAs so that people can be starting in March. It is mid-November, and again, things slow down with the holiday season that's fast approaching. So again, I would make sure that you're starting your advertisements well in advance of the holiday season. So that is everything for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I will leave the floor open to questions for the next 5-10 minutes. And as always, you can find me online at calverimmigrationservices.com. I'm also on YouTube, where I post weekly videos relating to Canadian immigration topics. You can connect with me there. I'm also on all socials, so here on LinkedIn, but also on Instagram and Facebook if you have any questions. Again, if you're an employer watching this, Thank you so much for joining. Please reach out to me if you have any questions about the LMIA process. If you're an immigration lawyer or consultant who's watching and you're wanting to start doing LMIAs, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help. I actually have an LMIA training course. If you are interested, I train representatives on how to prepare an LMIA properly so that you get an approval. And again, if you are a foreign national, either inside or outside of Canada, who's wanting just general immigration help, you can always book a consultation online with me on my website. Great. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. So I will just give it a few more minutes for the Q&As to come in, and I will end things in a couple of minutes. Perfect. So thanks everyone for joining. Again, put your comments if you're shy in the comments here on LinkedIn, or send me an email if you have questions. I'm always available. Once again, I'm online at calverimmigrationservices.com, or you can find me on any of my socials. And thanks everyone. Have a great afternoon.